All right, gang, here we go. This is just gonna be a quick little video on how to get your pictures ready to post after you've done your lighting, your 5 lighting pose plus your extra 6. All right, the first thing you do is you open up your picture in Photoshop. I can see already by the numbers here at the top that this is like 65 inches here, right? So if I go to image size, it tells me that this is 51.3 megabytes, 72 inches by 48 inches at 72 pixels per inch. This is way too big, all right? So the fastest way that I'm going to edit this is I'm going to click on my cropping tool here. I'm going to say width is 8 inches, height is 10 inches if I want vertical, and my resolution is 150 pixels per inch. Then I'm going to draw my rectangle like so. I can shape this rectangle once I draw it. Oops, I don't want to do that. Sorry, I perspective clicked here. Let's do that again. So I'm going to bring my box down here like this. I want to unclick perspective if it's checked. That's why it went all crazy on me. And I'm going to adjust the shape. So if you want a little bit of background in there, like you have an interesting shadow and you want to do something like that, normally the rule is with your portrait, even painting or drawing a photo, is don't put the eyes in the center of the page here. You want the eyes to be like at the 3/4 point up here. And remember, again, your rule of thirds, where her face is sort of in that thirds place here, right? So I'd say that's a pretty good crop. If once I hit the check mark, we go. Don't be afraid because it's going to shrink like this a little bit. It's, pay attention to the ruler here at the top, not the size of the picture on the screen. I click on my magnifying glass and I go this way, or I can use Command plus or Control plus on the keyboard. So here's my picture, right? Then all you're going to do with this is the same thing we always do, which is down here under the black and white cookie. I'm going to go to levels, and here's my levels mask with my adjustments. This lighting is actually pretty good, but I can just tweak it here a little bit, like so, right? I can do the mid-range a little bit here, like so. Another thing you can do is if you want to do saturation and things like that too, you can change the saturation, so we can turn down the saturation a little bit of the whole picture. And I can use my layer mask here, painting with black. Again, I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. I can do that with my parentheses key commands, or I can use, remember this drop-down menu here for your brush size and strength. I'm going to paint her back in a little bit here because I want some color in the middle. But my brush has a too hard of an edge on it, so it looks sort of weird here. So here I'm going to go to masks. So here's masks. Oops, it's way over here. Here's this here. I'm going to go mask edge. Remember this? And if I click here, this shows me what my mask is like. If I go to feather, I can really soften the edge of my mask here a little bit. And I can look at it in the actual picture if I want to. Command H hides the dotted lines here, so I can pull the feather down a little bit. And then you can come back in here. I can say OK. I can always go back in with my paintbrush, and I can soften the edges of my paintbrush a little bit. I can make this paintbrush a little bit bigger. Oops. Like so. And I can turn the opacity down a little bit. Remember that too, so it's not super harsh here. And I can just sort of paint that glow in a little bit here. Remember, I can also blur the background if I want to. I can make a duplicate layer of this. Say OK. Right here, I'm going to blur that layer. So I'm going to say filter, blur, Gaussian blur. There we go. So you can see this. I'm not going to worry about her face, but I'm just looking at the background, how it's blurry like that. I'm going to say OK. Again, on my background copy here, I'm going to put a layer mask, which is this little button right here. And I'm going to paint this out. All right, so nice how soft that looks, right? It looks great. You can also, here, the opacity is down on this too, so that sort of softens the image. And then the last thing I can do is I can use a photo filter. Where are you here? Photo filter. All right, and what this does is if your picture's a little bit orange, if I use a cooling filter, see the way it cools that picture off? I can use this cooling filter here. There we go. And I can try to match the skin tone a little bit better. So this is the filter. This is without the filter. This is with the filter. And you can mess with it a little bit. It just depends on what sort of an image you want to have. The other thing you can do, which is sort of like a super deluxe thing if you want to, is if you want to put an edge on the outside of this, I'm going to make just a brand new layer. So I'm going to say, I'm going to go to the top here and I'm going to say new layer. So this is just an empty layer right now. I'm going to flip-flop to black. I'm going to use my paint bucket, which might be under the gradient tool. I'm going to fill that with black like this. I'm going to put a layer mask on it. I am going to use my gradient tool. like so. I'm going to use this. I'm going to say black and white is fine. I'm going to pull in the center. And I'm going to go like that, right? So what this does, and let's go a little further out, is it puts a little bit of a vignette on the outside, which makes it darker. So now I'm going to go with my paintbrush and black here in the center. And I'm just going to, like choose some spots here. And I'm using a very soft brush. Again, I have my brush hardness all the way down to 0, and my opacity at like 50%. And I'm just sort of painting her face in like that. All right, so look at how great that looks, right? This was our, let me pull this up here. Oops. This was our starting image. Again, very, very lovely picture as it is. Look at how nice that looks, right? Totally like your senior picture right there. And again, you can always go back into, we have our levels here, the level adjustments, if you want to adjust those levels a little bit more now that you've fixed some things up a little bit. Just like that. All right. Then when you're ready to save it, you just say File. You can say Save. And if you want to save a Photoshop file, automatically that PSD file, that Photoshop file, is going to save it with all the layers. So if you want to go back and mess with it, save a copy as a Photoshop. But as you're ready to save it to post it, you're going to say JPEG, like so. I'm going to call it like so. I'm going to save it to my desktop, wherever I'm going to save it to. And I like to save it as 100% here because the compression, sometimes you lose a little bit of information. So I just go to max here and I say OK. And then I have my picture that's ready to post. All right, that's all you got to do.